My parents denied me $60,000 for life-saving surgeries while I suffered. But when I found out they gave $500,000 to my husband's cheating ex, we cut them off and they never saw coming. I'm 34 years old. I'm an elementary school teacher, and what I'm about to tell you still costs me to process even now, months after everything exploded. Basically, I discovered that my parents, who have money, quite a bit of money, by the way, preferred to invest almost $500,000 in my husband's cheating ex-wife instead of helping me with my medical bills when I was literally struggling to stay afloat. And no, I'm not exaggerating the numbers or the drama. I wish I was. I guess I should start from the beginning, so this makes sense. My name is Natalie. I've been married to Jonathan for 4 years, and until about a year and a half ago, I thought I had a pretty normal relationship with my parents. We weren't super close, but we talked regularly, family dinners every couple of weeks, that kind of thing. My parents own several businesses. They have properties, investments. I mean, they're doing well financially. Very well. I grew up in a big house, went to good, private schools, had everything I needed materially speaking. My younger sister and I never lacked anything, though we weren't spoiled like insufferable rich kids either. My parents were always strict about valuing money and working hard. Jonathan and I met about 6 years ago at a friend's gathering. He works, as a construction project manager. He's a super responsible and hardworking guy. When we started dating, he was already divorced from Samantha, his ex-wife. The story there was pretty simple. According to what he told me, she cheated on him multiple times. He tried to make it work because, I don't know, I guess he loved her or thought they could fix it, but eventually he realized there was no point, and they got divorced. It was relatively amicable considering the circumstances, no kids involved. They divided things up and each went their own way. Or so we thought. My parents met Jonathan when we'd been dating for about 6 months, and honestly, they received him. Well, there wasn't any drama like he's not good enough for our daughter or anything like that. In fact, my dad even commented that he liked him because he was a hardworking man with his feet on the ground. We got married a year and a half later in a small ceremony. My parents helped with some expenses. Everything seemed normal. Samantha wasn't a topic of conversation practically ever. She was just a part of Jonathan's past that had no relevance in our lives, or so we all believed. This is where things start to get complicated. About a year and a half ago, I started feeling sick. Really sick. At first I thought it was work stress. You know how being a teacher is, especially these days. But the symptoms didn't improve. Constant pain, extreme fatigue, digestive problems, a bunch of things that were basically ruining my life. After months of medical appointments, tests, and a couple of specialists, I was diagnosed with a pretty serious chronic condition. I'm not going to go into all the medical details, because I'm not a doctor and I don't even fully understand everything myself. But basically, I needed surgeries, treatments, and time off work to recover. The problem was money, obviously. My teacher's insurance covered part of it, but not all, and the bills started piling up in a way that gave me panic attacks. I had to take unpaid leave because physically I couldn't stand in front of a class of 25 8-year-olds. I couldn't even get out of bed some days. Jonathan was doing everything possible, working overtime, taking on all the household expenses, but his income alone wasn't enough to cover everything, plus the medical bills that kept coming. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars between procedures, medications, therapies, all of that. So I did something that cost me a lot because I've always been proud about this. But I didn't see another option. I asked my parents for help. I wasn't asking them to pay for everything, just help, like a loan I'd pay back when I could return to work, or even just part of the bigger bills. The conversation was in person. I went to their house on a Sunday, and I explained the whole situation to them. I showed them the bills, told them about my diagnosis, told them that Jonathan and I were doing everything possible, but that we were drowning financially. My parents' response left me cold, but in the moment, I didn't process how strange it was. My dad put on that uncomfortable face he makes when he doesn't want to talk about something and said that things were difficult for them too, that they had many expenses, committed investments, that they couldn't help in the way I needed. My mom added something about how we should learn to manage our finances better and that these situations are part of being adults. They offered me $500. $500, when the bills added up to more than $60,000. I left there feeling humiliated and confused, but above all guilty for having asked for help in the first place, so I did what I had to do. I got an online tutoring job that I could do from home in the hours when I felt well enough, basically working 2 jobs while recovering from surgeries and dealing with chronic pain. Jonathan also picked up freelance projects on weekends. It was a horrible year. Honestly, one of those you don't wish on anyone. Little by little, we were paying the bills, entering payment plans with the hospitals, juggling everything. My parents would ask how I was health-wise every time we talked, but they never mentioned the money again or offered additional help. Fast forward to about 4 months ago. My sister, who's 29 and lives about 2 hours from here, came to visit us one weekend. We were having coffee in my kitchen, catching up, and suddenly she mentioned something casual, super casual, about how it was interesting that mom and dad had decided to be angel investors in a wellness business. I was like, what? Because my parents had never mentioned anything about that. I asked her what she was talking about, and she got weird. Like she'd just said something she shouldn't have. Turns out, according to my sister, our parents had invested a considerable amount of money in a yoga studio that someone opened who she thought was a family friend or something. When I asked her when that had been, she said it started about 3 years ago, but they were still investing. My stomach started doing that weird knot thing you do when something isn't right, but you still don't know exactly what. I asked her for more details, and she mentioned that the studio owner's name was Samantha. You can't imagine, seriously, the shock I felt in that moment. I asked my sister if she was sure about the name, and she said yes, that she'd even met Samantha at a couple of family events she'd gone to, but I hadn't because I was sick or working. When I told her that Samantha was Jonathan's ex-wife, my sister went white. Literally. Neither of us could believe it. I called Jonathan, who was in the garage fixing I don't know what thing, and when I told him what my sister had just told me, his face went through like 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. The first thing I did, because I needed confirmation before going crazy, was search social media. I found the studio's profile, which had a name like Samantha's Wellness Journey or something like that. And there she was in all the photos, all spiritual and zen, talking about finding your inner peace and healing your body and soul. It made me so angry, I almost threw my phone. Then I went deeper into the profile and found photos where my mom was tagged. My mom, at the studio's grand opening, cutting a ribbon, smiling like she was her own daughter or something. Jonathan was in shock as much as I was. He had absolutely no contact with Samantha since the divorce, which had been like a year and a half before we met. He didn't know anything about her life, where she lived, what she did, nothing. And now we were discovering that my parents not only knew about her, but were actively involved in her life and her business while telling me they couldn't help me with medical bills that threatened to destroy us financially. I waited a few days because I needed to calm down a bit before confronting them, though honestly, I never really calmed down. I called my mom and told her we needed to talk, that it was important, and we organized a family dinner at their house for that Friday. When we arrived, Jonathan with me because this affected both of us. My sister was already there with her husband. My parents were acting completely normal, like nothing, pouring wine, asking about work, that kind of thing. I went straight to the point because I couldn't deal with the charade. I asked them if it was true that they'd invested money in Samantha's business. The silence that followed was so uncomfortable you could cut it with a knife. My dad was the first to speak and said yes, that they'd helped Samantha establish her business because they believed in her vision and the concept. I asked them since when they'd known Samantha, and my mom said they'd met casually about 3 years ago at a local business networking event, and that they'd connected very well. This is where I started losing my composure. I told them, trying to keep my voice calm but failing miserably, that Samantha wasn't some random stranger, that she was my husband's ex-wife, the one who cheated on him multiple times, and how was it possible that they had a relationship with her without ever mentioning it to me? My mom had the nerve to say they didn't think it was relevant, that it was water under the bridge, and that Samantha was a different person now, more mature, who had found her path. Then I exploded. I reminded them that a year ago I had asked them for help, crying in their living room, showing them medical bills that were drowning us, and that they'd given me $500 while giving my husband's cheating ex enough money to open a complete business. My dad got defensive and said they were completely different situations. That one was a business investment with potential return, and the other was, and I quote literally, money thrown into a bottomless pit because medical bills never end. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jonathan tried to intervene, saying this was completely inappropriate and that they couldn't compare an investment in his cheating ex-wife's business with helping their own daughter with a serious medical condition. My mom then said something that still boils my blood when I remember it. She said that maybe if I had taken better care of my health, eaten better, exercised more like yoga, for example, I wouldn't have developed this condition in the first place. That Western medicine isn't the only answer, and that I should consider more holistic approaches. I got up from the table, told Jonathan we were leaving, and told my parents to get out of my life. My dad yelled that I was being melodramatic, and that I couldn't cut contact with them just because I didn't share their perspective on a business situation. Melodramatic, that was the word he used. I kicked them out of my sight and we left. Jonathan driving because I was shaking so much I couldn't even hold the keys. The next day, I received a message from Samantha personally, saying she'd heard about my health condition and that she was sorry I was going through that if I ever wanted to try free yoga classes at her studio to help with pain management, it was available to me. The level of audacity, of cynicism, left me speechless. I responded with a simple, "Never contact me again," and blocked her on everything. My sister, bless her, started doing her own investigations because she was as outraged as I was. She talked to our aunt, my mom's sister, who apparently knew more than anyone had told us. My aunt called me, super uncomfortable, and told me that my parents hadn't only invested in Samantha's studio, but that they'd incorporated her into their social circle. When they'd celebrated Thanksgiving and Christmas with her in years when I couldn't go because I was sick or working. They'd gone on vacations together, like trips to spas and wellness retreats. Basically, they'd adopted her as a substitute daughter, while I was struggling to survive financially and physically. The following weeks were a nightmare on another level. My parents and Samantha, acting apparently coordinated, though they'd deny it, showed up at my workplace, at the school where I teach. Security had to escort them out because they wouldn't accept that I didn't want to see them. My principal was very understanding, but told me that if the situation continued, we'd have to take more formal measures, which was the last thing I needed, considering I'd barely returned to working full-time after my recovery. Then came the incident that really scared me. Samantha tried to enter my house, using the tech security door code. Fortunately, we'd installed cameras after all the drama and we recorded her trying to get in. When I asked my parents how she had our code, my mom admitted she'd given it to her in case of emergency because supposedly they wanted someone to be able to check the house if something happened to us. The logic was so twisted I didn't even know how to respond. My sister continued investigating, and what she discovered was even worse than we imagined. She reviewed some investment documents that our parents had left at her house during a previous visit, and it turns out they hadn't just invested in the yoga studio. In the last 3 years, they'd given Samantha almost $500,000 between direct investments, interest-free loans, help with her mortgage payment when she was going through difficult times, financing for business expansions. Basically, they'd completely supported her. Meanwhile, I'd worked 2 jobs during my recovery from major surgeries. Jonathan had sacrificed his physical and mental health working absurd hours. We'd eaten pasta and rice for months to save money. We'd postponed dental treatments and other medical needs because we couldn't afford them, all while my parents were gifting $500,000 to the woman who betrayed my husband. The situation escalated when my parents started spreading rumors in their social circle. I found out from a family friend who called me, worried because she'd heard that I was mentally unstable, and that Samantha had generously offered help that I'd rejected for being resentful and jealous of her success. Apparently, my parents were painting a narrative where they were the good guys trying to build bridges, and I was the problematic daughter who was having a psychotic episode for not being able to accept that my husband had a past. We found my parents literally camping outside our house in their car on like 3 different occasions. We called the police to document the harassment, though they didn't do much more than ask them to leave, but at least it was on record. I consulted with a lawyer about a restraining order, and although he said we had a case given the pattern of behavior, he recommended first sending a formal cease and desist letter to clearly establish our boundaries. We changed all the security codes, the locks. We even considered moving but decided we weren't going to let them drive us out of our own house. My sister and her husband made the decision to cut contact completely with our parents too, which made me feel supported but also guilty because I felt like I was destroying the family, though rationally I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. The rumors continued. Now, my parents were saying that Jonathan was financially manipulating me, that he was taking advantage of me, that he'd probably orchestrated this whole separation to isolate me and control me better. It was so absurd, it was funny. Except it wasn't funny at all because people I'd known for years were believing these lies or at least questioning if there was some truth to them. The stress of the whole situation was affecting my health again. My doctor, at my 3-month checkup, noticed that my stress levels were through the roof and that I was showing signs that my condition could worsen if I didn't manage the situation better. She recommended, basically ordered me, to reduce my work hours and consider therapy. I had to quit the tutoring job, which meant less income just when we'd started to be more stable. Ironically, around that same time, Jonathan received a promotion at his job with a significant raise and better health insurance, which was like a small miracle in the middle of the chaos. With his new income, we could finally breathe a bit financially, though we're still paying debts from my medical bills and will probably keep paying for a couple more years. We started couples therapy, not because we had problems between us, but because we needed tools to handle all this family drama together. Our therapist helped us establish healthy boundaries, process the trauma of all this betrayal, and focus on building our own family unit without the toxicity of my parents. I also started individual therapy because, honestly, discovering that your parents value you less than a stranger who betrayed your husband makes you question a lot about your childhood and your sense of self-worth. We decided to move next month to a different neighborhood. Not super far, but enough to have a fresh start without the constant feeling of being watched. It's a smaller house but newer, in a quiet area, and we're excited to have that space for ourselves without all these negative associations. Last week, my sister sent me a screenshot of an Instagram post by Samantha, where she was announcing the opening of a second location for her yoga studio. In the comments, my mom had written something about being proud to see someone so dedicated to healing the world flourish. It hurt to see it, I'm not going to lie, but it was a different pain than months ago, more like a confirmation that I did the right thing by walking away than a new wound. Jonathan asked me if I ever think about trying to reconcile with my parents, maybe when more time passes. I told him honestly that I don't know. Part of me, a very small part but one that exists, misses what I thought we had, but that probably was never real in the first place. Another part of me, the part that grew during all this, knows I deserve better than parents who see me as an investment without return while emotionally adopting my husband's cheating ex-wife. I don't know which of those parts will win eventually, and I guess it's okay not to know yet. What I do know is that I'm better now than 4 months ago. My health is stable. Jonathan and I are more united than ever. We have a plan for the future, and we're learning to build our own definition of family, one that's based on mutual respect and real support, not blood obligations and appearances. My sister and I talk almost every day, and her unconditional support has meant more than I can express. It's okay to let go of toxic relationships, even when they're your parents, and that's something I never thought I'd say but that I now believe completely.